Welcome, welcome. You're listening to 360 Info with Hamtonio. We are starting and broadcasting on the journey with Hamtonio. So we got a great show for you today. A little bit later on in the broadcast, in the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to go live on WERE. But I got my good brother, my brother from another mother. Well, actually, he's a Jagnet, and he's doing great things here in the States, and he's doing great things over there on the west coast of Africa in Ghana per se. So we have our correspondent man with boots on the ground, our good brother, founded one of our like you say, just he just over in our on our show all the time. You know, we have to bring him all the time because he's well connected to what we're doing here in Cleveland and over in Africa. So our good brother Nana Qua David Whitaker, I'm going to bring. Oh, it looked like I might have dropped him. Yes, but he'll be chiming back in a little bit because um, he wants to bring us some things that's going on over in Africa because it's a lot of things going on over in Africa, and it's a pleasure for us to have, and a straight benefit for us to have somebody that's living over there with some boots on the ground to give us the flavor of what is actually going on with some of the people out there. You know what they're thinking about the Sahel. What do they think about Abraham Traore and the other countries that are chiming in over in Africa? What is the pulse of the people? What are they thinking? And we know with revolutions, it's usually the young folks. What is the attitude? What is the mentality? What is in motivation and enthusiasm as far as the young people is concerned? What are their thoughts? What's on their mind? As this going on, and I know this internet thing has made the world much smaller, and now they're getting abreast of what's going on all over the world. All over the world. So, and I think the internet itself has been really to the detriment of the system, I would say, because now those people over there are more informed, becoming more educated to what's going on. And then now they know their value. They know their value at this particular point. They're not willing and to just give away their resources like that. I've been watching videos, about that, and a lot of people are just, and leaders, it's like they tired of just giving their resources away for free. The president of Uganda say no more raw materials are being shipped out of the country. So that's a serious awakening, and let's chat about that a little bit, and chat about who we are and what we are and how important culture and things alike are to us as a people. So I'm gonna bring my good brother on, Dr. Qua David Whitaker. My good brother, how you doing?
I'm doing good. All that time we were talking, then when we got ready to actually talk, I got
Yeah,
cut off. So
yeah, I don't know what that was. Yeah, so welcome.
everything is good though.
Yeah, it was good. Well, welcome again, my good brother. When we'll take a break when we go live on terrestrial radio, and bring our good audio listeners in, the folks who may be listening here in Cleveland, Ohio, 1490 AM WERE. We got probably about 8 minutes or something before them guys chime in. So, my good brother, yeah, I see you're in your studio, over in the village, my brother, and you
Ready,
work.
we get ready.
Huh?
Yeah,
What
I'm
is?
in the community center. We're going to have a meeting of 40 people here in about a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing some AI generated stock trading. So we're meeting with everybody that's involved at 4:30 today.
Okay. Well, Doc, the last time we was on too, you mentioned about, I don't want to harbor on it, your age, and and every time I try to reach out to you, you're keeping yourself busy over there, Doc. Did you want to speak on any of the projects that you got going on now? Because you simultaneously working on several things at the same time.
Well, we have to be always for our people, and we want to make it not necessarily about me per se, but what our people, what we all need to be doing. We are, of course, multitasking. So there's multiple things that need to be done. So we have to try to take on everything we can do on our watch, and that's within our control. So the main things we're working on here, we're constructing a big 5,000 square foot, 3-story business center for our group, about 200 yards from the Gulf of Guinea Ocean. So we're working on that. The first floor has been framed in, the second floor has been started. We just completed the delivery of the framing for the doors and windows, so that will go up will start next week. It's a rainy season here, so we can get postponed by rain. It rained bad today. In the village where we are right now, we are constructing a STEAM lab: science, technology, engineering, agriculture, arts, and mathematics center that we intend to be the major STEM center for this central region. There'll
Mm-hmm.
be nothing like it until we do it. And so we're going to open this up this November. It'll be all digital, which is in line with what young people need to be doing. You can probably, I won't apologize, but you can probably hear the goats in the background yapping. We are right in the village. There's 1,600 people here. There may be 400 goats here, and sheep here, chickens here. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and most of our 1,600 residents are young people. So Africa, as you know, is a very youthful continent.
Mm-hmm.
Average age on the African continent of 1.4 billion people is 22 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see, if you just extrapolate from that and think of what's happening in the global population, and you have 1.4 billion people, and 60% of them are at the age of 22, you should know what threat that poses to certain people to have a youthful population like that,
Mm-hmm.
where their population is aging, it's aging out. So it shouldn't surprise you, and you should be able to put two and two together and realize why there seems to be a stepping up on attacks on our people. We're the youngest people on the planet. And so other people want our land space. They want to take over that land space. And if you got a population of 1 million people that are age 22, they're not about to transition
Mm-hmm.
unless you can stimulate that transition by genetically modified food, poisoning of water, poisoning of your fish, uh, having GMO seeds so you can't grow anything. So unless you step up your game to get rid of these people, they are not going to die of old age. So maybe that's enough said about that. But that's what we're doing in the village. We're always looking for ways now, especially more intensified actually. We're looking for ways to provide economic streams of revenue for our diaspora brothers and sisters who are interested in leaving Babylon, and they're being encouraged to leave, or they're being shown reasons to leave that have always been there, but now they're on a high definition. So it's easy.
Mm-mm. Okay. All righty. Yeah. We lost Dr. Whitaker temporarily. And I find it strange, and when he's come back, it's a question that I want to ask him, is that I find it strange that for the smallest number of people on the planet, have they tentacles spread it all over the planet. It's almost like they went through like playing a Monopoly
Excuse
game.
me.
Yes, okay, there we
These
go.
calls are coming in on my phone. They're trying to interrupt what we're doing, but I'm going to
Oh, okay.
block
Go ahead, Doc.
one of them. So that said, we're working in various lanes about how we can increase our revenue stream so we can live here. It's one thing to come to Ghana and visit or go to Africa and visit. It's another level of concentration and conversation and planning if you plan to stay there.
Right.
Every vacation comes to an end and then you have to go back someplace else. So if you plan to stay, so we're working hard to try to figure out ways that people could stay. They could get their citizenship. They could find things to do. They can plug into things we're already doing, provided they got the right consciousness. That you can work with them. They're
Mhm.
compatible. They understand the concept of teamwork, Ubuntu. They understand how you compromise and you give some and you get some. They understand all of this stuff. So that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to fertilize the field so it'll be easy for other people to come and just plug themselves in. So we would be the front, the advanced team if it was a concert. We'd go to the venue and see what needs to be done, get the venue all set up so all everybody else has to do is buy their tickets, get to the venue and sit down.
Mhm.
That's the same thing we're doing now.
Mhm.
So we're trying to prepare the field so we can all work together and play together and earn together, live together, and protect ourselves.
Mhm.
So, Lynn, that might be a good segue to our recap of what we started last time and we didn't get to do.
Mhm.
Because I just mentioned some of the elements of what culture has to do. And I
Mhm.
mentioned last time we got interrupted by technical problems, but I mentioned that there's something that we don't really have a firm grasp of. And that's not to criticize us nor to minimize our challenges. There's a whole lot of things we don't have a firm grasp of, but this is one of them that's really, really important. So we all know the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. But we don't know. Wade Nobles has told us, Asa Hilliard has told us, it takes a culture to maintain that village. Otherwise, it's just a fancy, cute sounding slogan that doesn't mean anything. So we understand that slogan, but if we understood it fully in its total complexity, we would also have to admit to ourselves that we don't have any villages. And if we don't have any villages and it takes a village to raise a child, it shouldn't be hard for us to understand why we can't really raise our children. We don't have the mechanisms in place to accomplish that. So you might ask, well, what mechanisms would need to be in place? Well, to have a village has five major functions. The
Okay.
first one
And
is the tip.
we go well, hold that to me there. We're going live now.
Okay.
Welcome, welcome. You listen to 360 Info. I'm your host, Antonio. You guys are joining a conversation that has already started with my good brother, Dr. Quad David Whitaker. Welcome to the show. We got a great show for you today. And this is kind of a makeup show that we tried to bring to you guys a couple weeks ago, and we had some technical difficulties. So we was talking, some important stuff, and we want to make sure you guys get the information and because we got our good corresponding brother, Dr. Whitaker, who have boots on the ground over there. Because and I'm happy to see and hear that of so many people now starting to, well, at least conscientious people who's starting to plug into what's going on in the Sahel. And actually, this is getting world attention at this particular point. And we see that this groundswell of people are starting to gravitate to what my brother is doing and actually duplicating what he's starting to do in reference to resources and raw materials and that got some people kind of uncomfortable to say the least. We was having a conversation about Africa having one of the youngest populations on the planet. Okay, youngest population on the planet, and that is also threatening to someone or a group of people as well. And you would have to ask yourself, what is it or why is it that people have problems with other people just trying to survive? That's all our good brother in Bikini Fossil is trying to do. He just want to survive, take care of his babies, you know what I mean, and prepare something for future generations. But you got people who is hell bent on doing their best to stop that from happening because of greed, because of this thing called greed. So Vince won't be joining us today, guys. The guys who may be listening to us and maybe usually go to his channel, Vince Robinson, you can come over to the Journey with Hamptonio, and then you could catch the program there. Yeah. So my good brother Whitaker, we can continue that particular conversation.
Okay, it's good. You're making then you're making some great segues for so many different dimensions of this conversation. But let me just comment on one thing you just said. Why people have a problem with the Sahel, or why do people have a problem with any desire to be sovereign? Well, I would describe it akin to the vampire movies that we've seen. The one thing a vampire cannot afford to allow you to do is have control of your own blood. The vampire has to live off of you. So if you decide to move someplace, the vampire knows that they can't continue to live because their source of life is gone. So the Sahel and Africa and all these things, it's the source of the life of other people. So if you say, I want to do something different, well, they can't afford to let you do something different, because if you do something different, they can't live. They're living off of you. So they're going to give you pushback whenever you say, well, I think I'm going to go in a different direction. What does that
Mm-hmm.
mean? So it means I want to reestablish my own culture, which is what we're talking about now. I
Mm-hmm.
want to have my own culture. I want to have my own language. I want to have control of my own resources. Right now, you have all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So my culture is just hanging on by a thread. I want my culture to be predominant and seen everywhere. In the Sahel, for example, our language is French. Well, we ain't French. You getting all our money from our reserves. That's our money. So why do you get that money? The resources, the minerals that are in the ground, those are our minerals. Well, why you have control over them? Because you're living off of them. France, the Eiffel Tower, and all of this, lunch breaks in the middle of the day and all this stuff, all that is made possible by getting free stuff from Africa. And the people have decided that you getting all our stuff and you living large. We got all the stuff and we barely managing. Something is wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, we want to correct that. But correcting that means that you won't have this stuff. And now you're going to be upset. Your Eiffel Tower won't be taken care of with our resources. Your streets won't be kept clean by getting free stuff from us. You won't be able to brag and boast about how much you got it going on, because you're getting all of that bragging rights from our suffering.
Mm, mm, mm-hmm,
So as
mm-hmm.
long as you don't know that, nobody complains. But now they figured out that, wait a minute, the resource you living off of are in the ground under our feet all day long. But we don't have them. So they
Yeah.
figured that out. And
Mm-hmm.
so now we said, no, that won't work no more. So the people that's been living off of that are going to be quite naturally a little bit concerned and maybe upset, because they don't realize or remember that they've been stealing all of this stuff all of this time. And now the people say, wait a minute, we put new locks. We didn't change your locks. We put our locks on the door. Now it's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, well, see, you don't supposed to do that.
No,
You're
nobody's
supposed,
supposed to do that.
I mean, but still, this business relationship could coexist. All I'm hearing so far with a lot of the leaders is just pay me what it's worth, and then do what you would do with anyone you going into anyone's domain, surroundings, or whatever. What sense would it make for you to help in producing something? Some type of processing situation, and you bring all foreign people in to work the site. What sense did that make? You're gonna bring in your own people, so you're not gonna train the people, and that's where America fell out, is that they just was built roads to where the deal helped them deal with the resources that they was taking about. Forget the surrounding areas. We didn't care nothing about that. We just want
No,
to, yeah, we just want to come get our cobalt or whatever it is that we coming to get and leave. But it seems to be, and historically, it seems to be a problem with folk just being fair and acting fair with that, but then they somehow turns it around or just shut it down to where people are so ignorant to what's going on. And now when somebody call them out on being fair, then that's a problem.
it's a problem. But you said in order to you could do what you're describing, but there's two things you'd have to establish that don't exist. You'd have to establish that everybody's going to be fair and no one's going to be greedy. So now the situation is it's unfair because there are people that want to be greedy. They don't want just a portion of this. They want all of it. And they
You sound
want you
like
to have
Dr.
some of it,
Clark.
and it happens to be in your domain. That's the problem. They don't want to share this.
That,
They don't want to pay fair market value for your house. They want to come buy your house for the price that they say they want to pay you, not what you think your house is worth,
mm-hmm,
because they're greedy and they don't want to be fair. So culture takes care of most of those things. So the first element of culture is spirituality. What spiritual system are you going to be following that will help you to understand what is going on around you in the natural world, in the
mm-hmm,
cosmic realm? Because you are a part of that. So you have to have some idea of how it works and what you're going to do to maintain its rules. That's the first thing. The second,
uh-oh. Oh, I don't want to lose them on that again because that's what happened to us last time. But he said he was receiving some calls because he got a meeting going on in about an hour. So they probably trying to get in touch with him to do that. Just hang in there, guys. He'll be right back because I think this is ever so important because this is what I preach all the time. It's about culture. What everybody else got that you ain't got, you know, even when there's conflicts amongst themselves. This culture is connected to everything. Go ahead, continue, my
so
brother.
this going to happen. So the second element is you have to establish the mechanism, which is a problem for us as diasporans today in the U.S., maybe more so than other places. You have to establish what are your codes of conduct. What is it that will teach people how to behave? Because if
Yes.
you're going to live in communities or large collections of people, you have to have a set of standards so that people know what to expect under what circumstance, whose voices are to be respected for leadership, whose voices are to be respected for technical skill, whose voices are to be respected for security, and on and on and on. So
Mm-hmm.
I think if there's anybody that would disagree, just let me know. But I think everybody can agree that one of our problems as diasporans, especially in the US, is we are out of control.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what to do. We say, I'm just doing me and you do you. And we're supposed to somehow live together in some harmonious way and work together where everybody's just doing them. That's
Mm-hmm.
impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing we got, the second thing a culture has to do is establish the rules and the expectations, the code of conduct, the consequences for failure to follow the rules. And you got to have order. If you don't have order, you can't do anything. So that's the second element. The third element is you have to have a mechanism in place, which you know we don't have this, to teach your young generation what the rules are and what the spiritual system is to teach them how to make sense out of what's going on around them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the third thing. Then the fourth element is you have to provide for yourself. How is it that you're going to sustain yourself? Where are you going to get your food, your shelter, your clothing? What's the mechanism for that? And it's not to go get a job at the post office. It's not to just mooch off of your good friends. What is the mechanism to provide for your needs? in your community. So if
Mm-hmm.
we don't have that, and I suggest to you that we don't have that, so you don't have any community. Community is just a concept. You don't have any community. You live in a neighborhood, and the person that lives right next door to you, you may not even know who that is. Or you live in an apartment building. You're on the first floor, somebody's on the fifth floor. You don't know any of those people,
Mm-hmm.
and you wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
work with them. You lock your door and you hope you don't see anybody. Well, that's not
Mm-hmm.
a community. In this village of 1,600 people, everybody knows who all the village members are. So if they see a stranger here, everybody knows that that person does not live here as a visitor, because we know the people that live here, all 1,600 of them. So if we see a stranger, everybody knows it's a stranger because they haven't seen you, nobody's talked about you, nobody ever heard of you. So
Mm-hmm.
then you can provide for yourself.
And speaking of that, Doc, it just it gets me sometimes. I use this little analogy about this culture and working together, and and how we do history. Is so important. I wrote some stuff about not knowing history, that you can be in relations with a group of ethnic people or ethnic group, and not knowing their history, that they may be detrimental to you for you being involved in that relationship, or you being not really naive in that relationship, because you don't know the person's history, you don't know the descendants of that, you don't know the decisions that have taken place at all prior to you getting into this relationship with with this particular group or whatever. So history is so important. But I have issue and take issue with a lot of the African Americans here, by knowing the history in this particular country, and you so-called freed. I like what my daughter had with a Juneteenth flag, said free-ish since 1865. I,
Right, right. There's a
I,
difference
I said I
between
like that. Yeah, it's free-ish,
free,
free like some
free.
remembrance of freedom. you know, but the point I'm making, Doc, is this: we'll sit up here and get mad at our neighbor for rolling his car on your grass, or your two children get mad and not speak to them for 2 years, 5 years, you know. But here it is, a system that has done what it's done to you for 400 years, and you still trusting. You still engaging. I would be looking at that situation with a critical eye on every chance I get.
Well, see, what you're saying is so true, but it's related to the fact that we don't have a clear understanding of what history is. We don't
Mm-hmm.
know what history means. And we say, well, I'm not going to be living in the past. Well, the past is the only thing that you can live in. And most of the people on the call right now wouldn't think that when you woke up this morning, that's a historical event. That's over with. That's
Mm-hmm.
part of history.
Yeah.
So if I ask you, well, how'd you feel when you got up this morning? You're giving me a historical event. You're recalling a historical event. Or at times when you have a beef with somebody and you say, well, when did this start? Yeah, this started back when we went to that party last year at such and such. And ever since then, that's a historical event that you're talking about. And you're talking about the consequences of that single event.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't talk to him no more after that. And I ran
Mm-hmm.
into the brother here.
Mm. Uh-oh. Yeah, he'll be back in a minute, guys. You gotta understand, he's broadcasting from Africa.
Well,
Okay.
when you're
All
on a
right.
program in an hour, everybody's calling you because you at the head of it.
Right, right. We
So,
understand.
uh, so this everything that happens is a historical event, including this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
When you invited the people to join in, that's a historical event. That's over with now.
Mm-hmm.
So if we say we're not going to think about anything that happened before, the only way we can function every day is to try to be keenly aware of the word that was just said, because as soon as it's said, it is also historical.
Mm-hmm.
The present lasts for just an instant and it's over with. So to say you're not going to care anything about history, you're just saying you're not going to care anything about distant history. And The history that you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about is every single second,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
every
Right.
second.
I mean, but you
See, I
got
just
those who
turned off
still,
that speaker. That's historical.
yeah.
What's that?
I say, and you got people,
That's a
who
historical event. I just turned off that speaker. So we have to broaden our understanding and awareness of history
yes.
because all of our sage leaders throughout time from history, you're doomed to repeat it. If you don't learn from history,
Mm-hmm.
you're doomed to repeat it. So to say you don't want to know about history or you don't care about history, you're just repeating things that have happened before that would give you guidance. Because there's nothing going
Mm-hmm.
on in any of our lives right now that hasn't happened before to somebody, even it's happened to
Mm-hmm.
us. So if you don't care anything about history, you're just living your life on chance. You're just hoping that things are going to turn out all right. I tell people now, I said, your definition of an emergency is really the result of insufficient infrastructure, poor planning, and the lack of alternative scenarios. You haven't given any thought to the possibility that what you're attempting to do won't work. If you said, well, this could work and it may not work, but what are the things that could prevent it from working? Because if I can plan for those things, if that happens, I'll be prepared.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to start a business because I know how to make grilled cheese. But that's a different thing than having a restaurant, fool. Just because somebody said you got the best grilled cheese in the world, so you should open a restaurant. There's more to opening a restaurant than your ability to make a grilled cheese sandwich.
Right. Right.
If you don't know that,
Mm-hmm.
you'll go out thinking that it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to understand history. We have to get as much information we can about history so that when we see history begin to repeat itself, we already
Mm-hmm.
know how that story ends up.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we
Mm-hmm.
talk to our brothers and sisters and we say, well, so what happened with such and such? As soon as they say, well, what happened was, that's a whole bunch of BS coming. Because you done
Mm-hmm.
heard that story before. You know that
Mm-hmm.
line. But you only know that because of your experience with earlier historical events where people say what happened was, then you know
Mm-hmm.
the rest of it's going to be all a fabrication of some BS. You
Mm-hmm.
already know that.
Mm-hmm.
But so you have to pay attention to history because history keeps repeating itself. If you didn't know there was a time where people wore bell bottoms, you would think bell bottoms is a new thing because you
Right.
don't know any better. You say, no, we had that back in the day. That ain't new. That ain't new. That ain't new. They're just recycling that. So those are the things that deal with culture. So I would
Mm-hmm.
suggest if we don't have those things, and we know we admit to ourselves that we don't have those things, we go to the first line of defense, which is the African proverb says, a fall of a nation begins in the homes of its people. So you can't fix everything. You're just one person. You don't have this stuff. You can't do it all. But you could try to fix and strengthen the home that you live in because that's the heart and soul of African community, African culture is the family. So if you
Mm-hmm.
can't do anything else, you say, well, let me see how I can improve my family. Let me see how I can improve my child's school performance. Let me see how I can create some discipline. Let me see how I can establish rules in my own house. You may not be able to do everything in the whole community, but you can do something in your own home. Let
Mm-hmm.
me be more punctual myself. Let me be disciplined as a role model. Let me hold up standards. Let's establish procedures. Let's prepare these young people to be able to think and plan and listen. You could do that. That's the first element. Maybe that's the first thing you can do. But if everybody's home was solid, it'd be easier to work with other people in other homes because they would be
Mm-hmm.
solid too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's what I think. That's why I talk about this culture thing so much because it kind of for no, it kind of forces a person into it behaving in a certain kind of way because that culture brings forth certain rituals and customs and things like that, and the
All of
community. And the community itself kind of supports that culture. I mean, let's look at all the things that we allow unscrupulous people to do in our community. Because of a lack of culture, they're able to get away with that kind of behavior. But if you have a solid culture and a community that supports it, you couldn't go on doing wreaking havoc the way you be ostracized, put out, and doing done all kind of things. If you
Yeah.
had a common culture, and that's the glue. I think that
Then
everybody has, that forces folks to act and respond a certain kind of way.
then you mentioned a fifth element that I left out. The
Mm,
fifth element is after how you're going to provide for yourself, how are you going to protect yourself? How are
mm,
you going to protect your culture? Protect it from the elements, earthquakes, rain, tornadoes, floods. How are you going to protect yourself? How are you going to protect yourself against animals, against interlopers, against insects that might cause you harm? How are you going to protect yourself from that? And how are you going to protect yourself from other people like that are in your community? They're not from your community. They're not part of your community. They're just taking something from your community to take it someplace else. So you got to figure out how you're going to do all these things. Now, we're so way off the radar on the things I'm talking about because we decided to rely on the government, whether the federal government, the state government, the local municipality, the local school board. We relied on other things to do what we would do for ourselves if we actually had a community. And
mm.
then we get annoyed because they don't do it to our satisfaction. But they're looking out mostly for their interests and not for your interests. So they do what they think is best for them and tell us what happened was just vote for me the next time and we're gonna get to it that time. Well, we've been listening to that story forever and ever and ever too. So
Mhm.
we've got to make a decision about now. One more point, and then I'll get off and we'll come back to this. One more point. African people have to live in communities because there's so many of us, and our orientation is out of the Nile Valley, out of these areas where people were the first people on the planet that we know of as Homo sapiens sapiens. First intelligent people. The only intelligent people on the planet were put here was us. And there were so many of us that we naturally developed these mechanisms to be able to live together. To the contrary, the European came out of the Caucasus Mountains. They lived by themselves, just one person, his wife, and a few children. They don't need community. They don't need rules. Their DNA is based on them living by themselves, trying to find food and shelter.
Survival of the fittest.
But survival of the fittest. They have to survive. They're not used to vegetables because if you're in the ice age, all you're doing is chasing walruses, some animal that can survive those conditions, and you don't have no farms, you don't have no fruit. All you have is red meat, and you eat it raw because that's the way you get it. And you don't have stoves to cook on. You don't have anything. You got to discover fire, which was always in Africa. You got to discover fire. African people have always known fire because it comes from lightning and thunder. So you've always seen fire. So if someone tells you that the European discovered fire scratching two things together, you know that's a person that's talking to you about a development that took place in an area where they were deprived. So these people they don't need rules. They don't need behavioral
Yeah, he'll be right back. Stay with us, folks. There, like I say, you got a meeting going on. We only gonna go on for about another half hour or so, but it's very important what he's saying. And I'm gonna ask him about DNA. Do that type of behavior carry overs into a person's DNA of that survival of the fittest type of thing? That's what I want to know. Is that what we are witnessing right now with this greed? You know, like Dr. Henry Clark said, you know, when Dr. Whitaker touched on it. The man don't believe in fractions. He want it all. He want it all. You know, and you can see him going around the planet. Just think about it. For those who might have traveled in the Caribbeans and things like that, you go there, the Dutch got this island, and Portuguese got this island, and Spaniards got this island. It's almost like they went around the world, you know, playing Monopoly game. And wherever they stop, I got this. This is my property. This is my property. And the thing about it, it's the smallest group of people on the planet. The smallest group of people on the planet is going all over the world, staking claims in land and taking over people's lands and cultures and way of life. You know, actually going over there and restricting their movements in their particular areas. What is that telling you? What is that saying? You know, when I brought up the analogy of you won't even speak to your own neighbor for something and forgive them for something that they may do. But you willing and okay about forgiving somebody for 400 years that have done something to your great grand people all the way on up until today. You know, and when we sit up here and have this conversation about trying to return back to some resemblance of some type of culture and cultural foundation that you had before that gave you some kind of order, some kind of way of life, some kind of way to live. Black issues, because you know how we take everything here. You got to take the information that from this European culture that they're giving you, and you got to massage it to make it work for you. So you know it's a different type of philosophy, a different type of ideology that you are getting here, but you're willing to do that. And when some people come to you and say, "Hey, we did it a different way. We had a different way of looking at this. We got a different way of doing this." Then you look at them with cross eyes. But how do you trust somebody that got a 400-year history of not working with you or not treating you well? How do you do that? And what me and Dr. Whitaker have said time and time again, it has to be some resemblance of mental illness. Mental illness. You know, they talk about the Stockholm syndrome and how you emulate your same oppressors. You tell me a group of people that would take a spiritual leader, being, God, that looks like the same people that oppressed. Who would do that? And fight you and defend it adamantly, you know, and then tell you it don't matter what color Jesus was. It don't matter what God ain't got a color. This, but you got people all over the planet who are depicting God as some type of image, okay? And he has a color to him to resemble the people who are creating the thing. They do it. That just letting you making you understand that it's the God that is in you. You know, so you represent yourself, your group, your ethnic group, as is depicting the Creator, oh God, who looks like you. You know, like I said, if a pig was able to draw a picture of God, guess what? God would look like a pig. But for us to back off and have some issues because you know we say God is black or we create images of God that looks black. Some of us own black people have and issues with that and take up issues with that. Oh, it don't matter. It's spirit around there. The question is, what is it doing to your psyche? What is it doing to your subconsciousness? You know, and seeing some of the same people who have done bad things to you forever looking like the same God or something that you worship. That has to play with your psychic. You got to understand that. You know, you have to understand it. So it's important that you do those particular things with images, and that's why I say, you know, I say it over and over again about our ancestors. When you going to try our ancestors, the same people that you got? I'm speaking to African American people at this point. You know, when you going to try your own ancestors? You know, they've been here. Dr. Whitaker just described how long you've been on this planet. The only Homo sapien on the planet. Been here the longest. You don't think they developed any kind of customs, rules, rituals to keep the people in harmony, or to deal with some of the issues that just being human beings that people may get into certain conflicts, certain marital issues, certain other issues with other ethnic groups around. You don't think people sit down and say, how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to handle those challenges? Our ancestors did. They laid down there and telling you how to work in tandem to achieve things as a collective and not as an individual. We have those things in place. And hey, let me say this one here. And you got to understand too, by you being a conquered people, the conqueror, his job is to make you become one of them psychologically. He can't go around putting guns to you and forcing you. That's not ethically, and that's not logistically, viable to do something like that. So what did he do? He attacks you here. He attacks you in the mind. He inundates you with everything. He teaches your kids. And Malcolm said that long time ago. How do you let your enemy teach your children? So the point I was saying, when you get into their holidays and their rituals, look at 4th of July coming up. How well did we celebrate Juneteenth? Now, I got some people who sit up and say they're gonna stop doing the 4th and they're gonna do Juneteenth from now on. But like I say, we're gonna go out there on the 4th while we were still in captivity and deal with it. It's nothing wrong with not doing that. It's okay. It's okay to do that. Not necessarily participate in somebody else's, a culture that's something that is important to them. You just make sure you do the things that are important to you. That is the problem, and that strengthens your group. That strengthens your ethnic group. Into becoming that to create some type of identity. Because Black folks, we're suffering from an identity crisis because the stuff that is embedded in you from your ancestors, you carry that on. And that was a question I was going to ask Dr. Whitaker. Hopefully he could come back soon to it. Him being a psychologist as well, about how they're finding out through epigenetics on how we're carrying over things. They talk about the water cells holding and carrying memory. And carrying that anything that water comes in contact with, it takes a piece of whatever it is and holds it. This is some of the things that they finding out about water and cells and memory and epigenetics and how you pass those things on. Check out Dr. Joy DeGury. She talks about that post-traumatic slave syndrome, how we carry that trauma on and carry those particular things. But you are struggling with being in this survival mode, and over here in this particular system, you're struggling because your subconscious DNA is telling you this feels better for me, this feels good for me, but the system is telling you something else. I was talking to home health aide the other day, and letting them know, she was getting into the whole medical field. And a lot of us don't know, a lot of the calibration and the instrumentation that you have in these hospitals is based on the physiology of a white male and white female, not yours. Your biochemistry is different. How slight it may be, it's different. Just a little slight can create the difference between a monkey and a human being, as far as your DNA is concerned. But it is a difference. There is a difference. It's a difference with this melanin that you have in there. So I was telling her that all the instrumentation is based on the white male and female that's in the hospitals. You don't have no conversation with your doctor if you burdened with having the illness of cancer and they want to give you radiation treatment. Your doctors is not having a conversation with you on how much radiation that you should take, having this melanin in your skin. Black absorbs energy. White reflects energy. That's why you're so spiritual about the energy around you. What did Dr. Carver say about the plants? The plants talk to him. That's the energy that he was able to pick up through his melanin from the plants and understand compounds and plant compounds and things of that nature, and create and do the creation that he did in the plant kingdom. That's the melanin. That's why you hear that bass. That's why that drum resonate to you the way it does. You're picking up all of that. It's the melanin. You are a special being. People talk about the genomes, the 9 genomes that we have, compared to our European brothers who have only 6 genomes. The chimpanzee only have 5 genomes. Look up a YouTube video with Dr. Philip Robinson, I believe that's his name. You know, he talks about that. He talked to this top geneticist and interviewed him and talked about this disparity and differences on this genome. He said people who have 9 genomes, you're more likely to have more intelligence, more geniuses come out of that gene pool. And then you wonder why black folks accelerate the way they do. That's why they marvel at you, because you are a special human being. And we have to come to know, understand that you cannot do everything that everybody else is doing. Do you know melanin cells hold on to things in your body? So if you put ill in your system, by your system having melanin in it, it holds on to that. That's why it's difficult at a lot of times for an African American that may be hooked on drugs to get rid of it, because that melanin holds on to it. You can go back to those who got a little age, and you could go back to those flower childs back in the days, 60s. You talk about drugs. The type of drugs and the things that them folks was doing at that particular time, all the way up to today. But they're able to shake it loose, go get a little help, and now be vice presidents of banks and corporations and stuff. You know, it's difficult for a black person to shake that stuff loose because of the melanin. But at the same token, when you put some good in your system, that melanin would take that exponentially and do some good with it. You see? So you have to know and have to understand your physiology. You have to understand what makes you tick, what makes you different. Look at all the, if you only knew all the experimentations that this system has done on African Americans and people of color all over the world, because they are so intrigued about what makes you tick, to what the barbaric experimentations that they have done on black folks. You would be appalled. It would just blow your mind. And this is the reason why that there's so much in the uproar right now by curtailing history and not to letting you know about who you are and what's going on with you. You know, some of the stuff, I was talking with Dr. Wood, it just seemed like we is not even able to critically analyze things, even when given historical breadcrumbs. The things is the stuff is right in front of your face at times, and we're still not able to put it together and make some sense out of some stuff. You know, why they don't want abortions even with incest and rape? What is that saying? What is that telling you? You know, critically analyze that statement. We just go right on along with it. Just things we say and don't really understand what's been said. NATO. I challenge all of you out there to look up all the countries that are involved in NATO. Please do that. But we say it all the time, hear them say NATO, well, NATO's doing this. Do you actually understand what they're saying? Those are all white nations. NATO. That means we are caring for ourselves here to protect our little small group who make up 12% of the world's population. That's what it's about. Everybody that's in the southern of equator. That's why they're having all their goods and services stolen from them. Their job and their mission is to keep them at bay so they can live, so they can prosper. That's what it's all about. And we say those things, NATO and all that, right in front of your face. And it don't really sit in. It don't take root for you to understand what exactly going on. What is they saying? So I say to you again, why is it that these people got a problem with these black folks just trying to maintain and live? Well, it's over 20 times that Abraham that they tried and Bikini Fossil that they tried to assassinate. Why? Look at the stuff that's going over in Israel and uh and with Palestine over there. Why? Some say it could be the new canal that they had been proposing for a long time. Look up the Ben Gurion Canal, the Ben Gurion Canal. Look that up. That was a plan to build a canal right through Israel, right through the Giza, over there in Gaza, so they can not have Egypt and then won't have a monopoly on the Suez Canal. Is that the plan? Is that the reason for why they want to decimate that particular area? Look up Ben Gurion Canal. Why? Why can't they just work in harmony with those people? Huh? Why can't people just be fair and everybody benefited? Live and let live. Why has that always been a problem? Ask yourself a question. Why? Why is it always a problem? Why you always got to go around taking somebody's stuff? See, that's history that we were just talking about. And then some people got the nerve to say that it ain't important. If you got a history, what I was elating before, if you got a history of a people that is doing those particular things, and then you posse up with those particular people, unbeknownst to you, what kind of situation are you putting yourself in if you don't know history? You're sitting in the lion's den and don't even know that you're sitting in the lion's den. Look at the history. Look at the history that's been going up in Europe for all this long. Has folks been peacefully coexisting in Europe? Think about it. What kind of society can be born out of society that hung folks and burnt people to the cross and for being witches and this and that? Then you had over, and people forget about, you had over close to 800 to 1,000 years of dark ages where people could even read. And then, but the creator, oh, I'm gonna hurt somebody now. But the creator is gonna give a book to them that's gonna save the world. Folks just killing folks. The 100-Year England War, the War of the Roses, the dramatic tribes, and the fighting here and the fighting there. All that's fighting is about is who's gonna control the rest of the world. All your World War I and World War II. Just think about those societies. Who was fighting? They was fighting amongst themselves to see who's gonna run. Which white race is gonna take over? Who's gonna run? Who's gonna run the show? They was fighting in Africa with the Berlin Conference. So they said, hey, let's get together and let's divide up Africa. They did that fairly. I don't know if it was fair, but they did that amongst themselves. Why Africa speaks so many other languages other than their own African dialects? Portuguese, English, French, Spanish. Why? Because they was a part of the Berlin Conference. And they divided everything up for themselves. Just like those Dutch colonies all through the Caribbean and things like that. What is that telling you about a people? We ain't gonna even talk about Australia or what happened to the Aboriginal brothers over there. Tell me, question for y'all. Tell me a point in time, because Britain and the British went all over the globe exploring. That's all they got over here, Britain. So tell me a point in time of history where these great conflicts took place on the seashores of these continents. Where? When? You probably don't get that nowhere in history because everybody let them in because they thought they was human just like them, and they let them in. They could have put the word out, hey, don't let these people in. Keep them out bathed in the ocean. Starved to death, you know. But they didn't. They let them in. They wanted to treat them like human beings. They showed them how to take care of themselves being in a new geographical place. But what happened? What happened with the Native American? And everywhere they went, the disease broke out. That's how possibly 2/3 of the Native Americans died through disease. Same thing happened in South America. When folks came in, when foreigners came in, same thing. A lot of disease brought disease. So how this particular system that you've been inundated with, you know, taught the Pledge of Allegiance when you was a little kid, how this particular system is going to work best for you. And we're holding on to it simply because of our mental conditioning. That's where we at. Our mental conditioning. When are you going to start thinking for yourself? When are you going to think out the box? You can't allow someone else to teach your classes. Me and Booker T. Coleman, we talked about that. If we can't have the schools, we should be having that Saturday, Sunday schools to where we talk about who we are in our history, just like the Jews did. Talk about who they are. Talk about their culture. Talk about their ethnic group, how, and what we can do for the survival of our group. That's what we should be doing. But when folks like myself and Dr. Whitaker, when we start talking about some of these ancient teachings, we get pushback. It's the black stuff again. And I know most of my listeners who listen to this show is not those type of people who think like that. They're looking for something else. And the point I'm just saying, and I know some of the struggles that you are having with some of your family members and friends. Because for the events we've been doing for over 10 years, if you had a big, large circle of people that is your family and friends, if you had that big circle, all these events that we've been doing, we'll be busting out of the seams. For over 10 years, we doing programs during June, the parade and all that. If each one of the participants had a large group of people that was on the same page as them, they would go back and tell them and say, hey, Carter G. Woodson Project people, they do this every year. This is a great place. I found a place that we can go and do this and express our culture and take our babies to. There's no way that we still struggling, even though I never had the marketing dollars to put out the information of what we're doing. But guess what? By word of mouth alone, after 10 years or more, we should have the audience that we want. But why not? Because we know these are small circles of people who are thinking like this, who are understanding this. Now it's growing a little bit more now. But we've been tooting the horn for a long time, trying to get people to wake up and try to do the Sankofa and look back and see what our ancestors have left behind. Now, those things, the stuff that is going on over there in Africa right now is historical. And like I said before, there may be some little skirmishes here and there because, like he stated before, those folks don't want to give up their rental property. They're not trying to do that. So anybody who's trying to disrupt the good thing that they got going on, they got to go. Why do you think they got rid of Gaddafi? Gaddafi was trying to do a United States of Africa, was trying to back their dollar by the resources that they have up underneath the ground. No, they couldn't have that. And the system in this country got you believing that we going around there here trying to save the world and with diplomacy and democracy and things. It's all about their best interest. Your guy Trump, that's all he's doing is going around in these countries and the ones that he can manhandle and trying to shake them down to see what he can get. I mean, that's what I'm saying about us having blinders. You can't see that. You can't see what he's doing. Offering $5 million for citizenship. You can't see that, what this is about. That this ain't a money grab. That's why I say our critical thinking, our critical analysis for some of us. Come on, you got to see what this is. And like I said before, listen to what I said. I said it at the beginning when he got elected, that this country, the saving of this country is going to be due to conscientious white people. Our hands, our fate is in the hands of conscientious white people, meaning how far they're going to let him go before they say that's enough. If they continue to sit back and be idle, which they starting to amp up a little bit, they ain't ready yet. They ain't quite there yet, because he got to do something really reprehensible that's going to cause them to act. So he, is almost coming, but it's going to be up to the conscientious white people if they're going to say, guess what? I had enough. He's gone too far. Because you see, it almost took a term and a half before they admitted that Bush wasn't that intelligent, So they didn't want to talk about that outwardly, But we knew right off the bat that he wasn't the brightest president, But Trump, for them to call him out for his bigotry and the things that he's done, I mean, that's why I call it divine order. It got to be divine order that he's in place right here. The reason I say that, because it don't make any logical sense of how he still got to this point to where he is right now. And America being the laughing stock. They don't, I mean, tariff on, tariff off, tariff on, white, tariff on and tariff off. How unstable do that makes a business? They don't know what to do. So you can see all the inexperienced people that he got in there, because he wanted to fix the problem from last time. See, you had generals and people telling him he can't do this. You can't do this amongst the people. You can't do. So guess what? He got rid of all of that. He said, I ain't going to get stopped by this term next time. I ain't going to have these folks who got a conscience get into my way of whatever it is that I want to do. So that's where we at, folks. We have to do better. We have to seek our own heritage and lineage if we're going to get out of here and get in touch with nature. Get in touch with nature, because that teaches you about God and how he put things together. So come on out, again, next Sunday. Come on out to the Mediterranean, and let's culminate this month of June with our Juneteenth Sankofa ball at the Mediterranean. That's the last Sunday in June. Come on out, a little African drumming, food, and at least, share with people who are not afraid of who they are and their culture. Come on out. 216-323-6155. Give me a call to reserve your tickets. 216-323-6155. Come on out. Tickets are $25, $45 for a coach, for a couple. And come on out and enjoy and experience. I said, we got to do whatever we can to hold on to this culture, because the system is trying so hard to wipe this out. Can't you see this? They're trying so hard to wipe it out, because the truth is coming out, because our ancestors told you. They told you this, that it's going to come a time that your culture or people is going to try to get rid of this particular information, y'all. So we're going to be signing off on the broadcast, the terrestrial radio broadcast. We appreciate our good brother Tone for keeping it together for us. Vince will probably be back next week. So with that being said, he said, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and make it a great day, Cleveland. Peace. And that's going to end our terrestrial radio. And those who still on our YouTube channel, you know, you should subscribe to the Journey with Hamtonio and Vince Robinson. Subscribe to our pages, and we try to bring you good information here. Because I don't know if you guys picked up what Uganda's president said as well. That he said he's stopping all raw materials that are leaving this country, the continent, in his country. All raw material. He said if we can't get them out of the ground, guess what? They'll be there for our children. That's the right attitude to have. That is the right attitude to have. Your people, your resources. And these people are just asking for a fair shake. They ain't asking you to do anything. You know, you can no longer pay Niger 80 cents per kilogram for their uranium. You got to pay 200 euros for it now. And that's against the law. You know, their survival is based on that. Their survival. And you have to understand it. So you know they're going to cause some skirmishes to happen, and so some instability. That's why they want to pay somebody $5 million to kill our good brother, Abraham Traore. See, but now you got Chad, you got Senegal, you got Ghana, you got even Morocco want to help. You got Libya. You know, you got Rwanda is talking about it. You know, you got some Zimbabwe, some parts of South Africa is looking at what the good brother is doing. You know, it's starting to come together, but you know they're going to bring some instability there. You know, and watch what's going on. It's going to be interesting to see what's going up into with these European countries as well, with the whole Israel, Ukraine, Iran, and all. And I find it very strange. It's funny to me that these people want to regulate who have nuclear capability. Now, we're the only country that actually dropped something semi-nuclear on a group of people. We are the only ones who doing it. Don't say we. I'm sorry, because I don't include myself into none of this. This country is the only one who has done that to a group of people. But you're going to regulate how somebody else runs their country. How arrogant is that? You can't have it. You're going to dictate policy on who the irresponsible. You've been the only irresponsible one. You sit back there and you fortified Israel. You made sure that they were safe. Nice white nation. Y'all don't get it? Y'all don't see what this is about? You made sure they got all the weaponry that they needed over there. But all the other Arab countries around there, you went in there and tried to shoot deals with it, the oil. So you figure you give them money in replace of them arming themselves up. So you played the game on. So can we even say that these Arab countries, how y'all talk about black folks selling themselves out, did these Arab countries sell themselves out to the powers that be, to the G7? I don't hear much talk about that. Because how y'all letting the G7 go in there and exploit all the Arab countries like that? And seeing what they doing to your own cousins. So y'all sold out for the dollar too? For the money? But ain't nobody talking about that. But you guys want to go back 500 years and talk about the Africans selling somebody else. Anybody tell you about the Native Americans selling themselves out? What about that? But you've been taught with so much conviction to jump on your own people and defame them and talk about them as being halfway worthless, but that's okay. You know, you guys don't want to talk about the whole some of the Muslim population, the Arab populations over there, how they was dealing with slavery. They was one of the first enslavers. Do I hear you talking about that, people? Where you at with that? You don't even talk about it. Look at the stuff that is going up in Libya right now. There's some places up in North Africa where they're housing and dealing with African slaves now. But do you say anything about it? You know, because you're glued to the doggone basketball game, the playoffs, and all the rest of that crap. That's what you're doing. Are you paying attention to any of that? No, no. They're telling you that's why the system is so confident. They're so confident in you. You know, they can show you stuff right in front of your face, right on the TV, and 2/3 of us ain't gonna do nothing about it. It's gonna go in one ear and out the other. You ain't gonna pay attention. You're gonna continue to operate the way that you're doing right now, not changing anything. That's why they're confident. They can show you in a movie right in front of your face. Because you know the CIA admitted that they right there in California, you know, dictating policy and massaging how information is being depicted through the movies. They'll, you know, there's information out there that tell you about that. You know, because they know it's all about propaganda. It's all about imagery. That's why they control these markets on this. You know, that's why UK, you know, it's hard for you to say something, even in a platform like this. If you say something about the untouchables, you know, you there's a problem. You're anti-Semitic. You this and you that. You just can't tell the truth about anything. That whole movie and entertainment industry is horrible. It's horrible how black folks is being treated. And people showing one hand and doing something over here and making you think that they're your friends. How long are we going to continue with this? I mean, it's insane to me. How long are we going to continue to do crazy stuff? How long are we going to keep getting in bad contracts and our talent is being misused? I wish I had a chance. I mean, I know the brother, but you know, brother Ginn, you know, that's dealing with all these young, talented folks. They need to be set down. Because it's appalling for us to sit back and let our talented ones be used by the system. They should be culturally groomed to understand what's going on when they go into that particular world. You got several families feeding off of the talent of one, his publisher, his banker, his accountant, his agent. All these folks is feeding off of the talented black children. And we should be prepping them about that. We should be letting them know that they about to send you the kryptonite. As our good brother Umar Johnson says, the snow bunnies. You know they coming for them. But do we prep them? Do we educate them? How can you send your kids out to the sharks? Something's wrong. We got to get back to the basics. How are we not employing ourselves? We got enough people out there to do the Shark Tank. Our folks are still developing and creating all kind of things. But we can't get the funding to do it. And the folks who got the money do it carry the same power. Are they afraid to do it? Or they can't do it? Or they're not conscientious to do it? Or all three of them? You can't make a movie? You can't take movie houses? Okay, I give you a good one then. How are we still allowing other folks to come in our community and don't pay the house people? Don't pay the host, you know, the homage to the house, to the community from which they are making their money. How are we still allowing that? For them to come in and take our resources out like that? How are we doing that? This day and age. And it's okay. How are we okay with our talented ones being the dominant ethnic group of any industry like the football, basketball, or whatever? And we comfortable with letting another ethnic group own and dominate that situation for years, forever. How are we comfortable with that as people? And our talent pool is the ones who's funding this thing. And we're okay with letting another ethnic group run the show. If that ain't mental illness, I don't know what is. And like Dr. Amos Wilson said, we'll go on a team, we'll wear the jerseys, we'll call ourselves Cavaliers to work together. We'll work, this team will work against this team. We'll set that all up for the system, for the man. But we can't do it for ourselves. Work as a group, work culturally together, call ourselves this, and work against the opposing team collectively. Like Dr. Claude Anderson said, quit looking at race as a color, but look at it as a competition. The Asians is trying to get as much as they can. You know, the whites is trying to get much as they can. Hispanics is trying to get as much as they can because they're working as a group. That's what a culture would do for you. That's why I preach culture to you all the time. A group of Indian people, 4, 5 families will come together and pool their resources together to get a Mr. Heroes or something to that nature. And they would all work together until each one of those families own their own Mr. Hero or whatever it is. You see, a culture does that. A culture keeps you in line. You know, if you decided to stray outside of the normalcy of how you do things, you would be spanked for that. And you'll be fearful not to work in the best interest of the people in the culture. You'll be fearful to do that. You'll be afraid of the repercussions that could take place if you did something that's not in the best interest of the people and your babies. That's what a culture brings you. And like Dr. Amos Wilson say, a culture is economics as well. It's not a food, just a food and a dress. And all those things play a role in perpetuating the culture, the ideology that the culture is bringing to the people. The food, the dress, the dance, all those are instruments to help strengthen the culture. And the culture is economics, as Dr. Amos Wilson say. If our culture make these hats right here, if our culture say we wear these type of hats, guess what? Somebody in that particular group is making these hats. So the money is being passed around and circulating in your culture, in your community. That's how serious a culture is. And that's why the man works so hard to take you out of your culture. We have a reactionary culture, as Dr. Amos Wilson describes. He describes that as a reactionary culture. It's a culture based on how you're being treated here. It wasn't in our culture to eat chitlins. It wasn't in our culture to put our little finger up when we being excused. Certain things we created based on how we've been treated here in this culture. It's a reactionary culture. So I'm telling you to go back and study your foundational culture. 4th of July ain't your culture. But we're going to be out there. It's not our culture. But they have taken our minds, they have stolen our minds. And we first have to recognize that they've stolen our mind. That's why, I keep talking about my little t-shirt, anti-establishment. We got to reset everything that we've been taught, this learned behavior, because it ain't working for us as a collective. We have to understand that, y'all. So again, I've been wanting to come down here and talk about old 45, 47, because some of the things, that he's doing is just atrocious. And I'm screaming the alarm that we need to be really paying attention. And it may call for an exit strategy. It may call for that. Because I keep weighing up and weighing both sides. And the way it's looking right now, it is not looking good at all. So let's get on board. Let's start becoming who we were meant to be. Just reestablish this relationship with nature, which is nothing but the study of God. And I think once you start doing that and start marveling God's creation again, then I think it would bring you back to your God consciousness, and you'll start respecting life and things all around you again. I was having a conversation the other night about that, about how we disrespect and don't care about nothing around. If you did, you would know and you would understand and you will respect life a little bit more. You respect life a little bit more of knowing, of knowing that God's handiwork is in everything. And nature will bring you real close and closer to understanding our relationship with everything in the cosmos. You will value life more. Therefore, you would value somebody else's life. And I just sit back and just marvel at everything, the sun, the moon, the stars, plants, how you could take some soil and transplant it somewhere else. And the energy in that soil is still there to harvest and nurture a seed, and it would grow. That's amazing. That a flower has a male and female principle in it. Everything has balance like that. That is amazing to me. That somebody had to think about that. You know, the hairs in your nose, the eyebrows, your eyelashes, the hairs under your arms, all that. Somebody had to, and all of it has a purpose and a meaning. Know who you are, my good people. Know who you are and know what you're about. So we're going to sign off now. We got I think our good brother Vince, he may be able to, I don't know if I could send him a link or not. He's out of his meeting and maybe want to chime in, but I don't know if I can get him connected here. But anyway, I appreciate you guys. Well, come on out. Come on out. The 29th to the Taste of Africa Sankofa Ball, Juneteenth Ball. It's going to be at the Mediterranean. Um, Vince is calling for my link. Let me see how I can get that to him. I don't know how I can do that. Let me see. Oh, let me see. I might can post this up. Let me see something here. Let me see. Oh yeah, I did that. I forgot it was still in the still have connected to the link. We're gonna stay tuned with me. We're gonna bring brother Vince in for a couple minutes before I sign off. Uh, Seems like he wants to chime in here. But again, I also want to let you guys know that I'm working on a special project. Hopefully, in the next month or so, I'm working on a book. And it's going. I think it has some good information. I think it's needed. I think you'll be able to get something out of it. It's connected to my job. What I some folks might have know or what I retired from. I retired police officer, and the book is related to my experiences and dealing with the culture as far as the job is concerned. So I believe it'll give you a good insight. Brother Vince, what's happening?
It's all good, brother. Just finished participating in an event downtown at Stella Maris. They have something called the Ohio Freedom Path, and it's an app that you can put on your phone, and you can go to different stations that were on the Underground Railroad, and you get exposure to narratives. So I was asked to come in as John Malvin today, and I read an excerpt from something that he did. So that's what's happening. And then I'm traveling out to Findlay to do a Juneteenth set at an African American Cultural Center in Findlay, Ohio. So
Okay, that's a little later on this evening.
Yeah, actually, we hit at 5 o'clock. Hashtag Virgo asked me to sit in with them today, so I'll be performing with them.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So I know you hit them hard and deep today. I,
Yeah,
I
we did a little bit.
yeah, I caught the tail end of it. I was actually in the meeting today, listening as you were connecting with the audience. So just wanted to jump in and wish everyone, you know, what some might say, happy holiday. We do have cause for celebration because you know we saw a significant change, a paradigm shift with the whole Juneteenth piece. But the thing is, you know, we're celebrating freedom to a certain extent that we don't have because it's freedom that we're going to have to take. You know, uh, I talk about this all the time, and we make reference to it. But we're actually at war, and the war is a war that's taking place in our minds. And there's a lot of competition for your headspace. And at a certain point, you have to make a conscious decision to be responsible for your thoughts and not allow someone else to control your thoughts and your actions. So we live in a fear-based reality, and we have to paradigm shift that from fear-based to, some might call it faith-based. I call it knowledge-based, because when you have knowledge and you have understanding and you have awareness, you can do the things that are in your best interest and not the
Yeah,
best interests of others.
yeah,
So
and it works. That's what I'm saying. So, and we talked about it, you know, a little bit, you know, today. I mean, what is the job? If you got a people that's been conquered and you have a conqueror, what is the conqueror's job? Role. You know, he can't go around and try to rule you with a gun all the time. This, that, that. He has to attack you here in your mind. You know, he got to make you again become one of him on
right.
automatic. You know what I mean? So you worshiping his holidays, you wearing green on St. Patty. You're gonna go out there and oh, happy 4th of July and all the rest of the rest of the stuff. And all he got to do is sit back and watch you respond to those things. And he said, "Oh, okay, I still got them. They're comfortable." Well, what was going on in the 60s? You know, when he was uncomfortable, you was on there wearing dashikis, you was wearing the black, red, and green. You know, you had tikis on, you was talking black power, your songs was coming up, talking about what the fall. Shit, he was nervous
Yeah. Well, it's cyclical. You know, we woke up during the 60s and the 70s when James Brown said, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud." That created an avalanche of
then.
this reawakening of our cultural reality.
Mm-hmm.
And then you fast forward to the 80s and you had hip hop music and you had conscious rappers, and it was the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the antidote for that was gangster rap. So they brought in gangster rap and they eliminated conscious rap. And now
Mm-hmm.
what you have in large portion, because I'm not going to say all the folks out there doing rap today are not talking about anything, but a lot of the stuff that is acceptable on a commercial level and available to the masses is a whole bunch of garbage that really doesn't relate to who we are. But the critical thing, Brother Antonio, and that this is what I want to impress on those of us who are watching now, is just the importance of remembering who we are. That's the reason that they don't want us to know history. The event that I just went through, it was all white people. And
Mm.
white people were connecting to their involvement in the emancipation of Black folks who traveled from the South to Canada. So it was about abolition, and it was about how there were white people who objected so much to the way that we were being treated that they would offer their assistance in getting us from one place to another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the people who was in this session was actually descendant of one of the abolitionists from back in the day.
Mm.
So when you think about it, here they are in 2025 carrying forward the work of their ancestors, and they're white folk. You know, we're quick to demonize everybody, but we have to understand that we all come in this world for a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us live in that purpose. So this person who exists 2 generations after their ancestor is someone who was helping us to remember what happened so that we get a better sense of who we are. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the critical piece to this whole thing is because it's based on slavery, and it's based on our identification with that phenomenon in our history, is that we have to realize that our history is so much more than that. So when you hear Frederick Douglass, when you hear William Wells Brown, when you hear John Malvin, you hear these people who were so committed to changing things and so committed to making a difference in the world, understanding that we are them, we have to operate with the same commitment and the same consistency and the same energy about making this place a better world and helping us to remember who we are. Because when we remember who we are, then we cease to be the victims that we've been made out to be all this time. And we live in the power that we have as creators in this universe. We create our reality. We create the change. We create new us. I had a conversation there with someone who was suffering with certain medical conditions. And the message to this person was, well, if you change the things that you're doing, the things that are causing you to have the pain no longer cause you to have the pain, but you have to give up those things to get to a place where you don't experience the pain. You know, addiction is a very real thing. And what they do is they set us up for lifetimes of addiction, whether it's that cup of coffee that you drink every morning to get yourself started because it's a stimulant and it stimulates you in a certain way. Whether it's the orange juice that you drank because the orange juice is pure sugar and other chemicals, but same thing. So you drink the orange juice and you get that rush, or you take real oranges and you squeeze the juice out of the orange and you get the benefit of a living water, not the tap water, which is basically toilet water that's been treated with chemicals and processed. So you drink it thinking, oh, hydration, and your cells ain't getting hydration because what you're drinking is dead. So you can drink real water, structured water that's going to provide you energy and benefit. We have to know the difference between the two, and that's where knowledge comes into play. That's why we say all the time, physician, heal thyself. You heal yourself because of the knowledge that you have of your body. It's like you say all the time, brother, we don't know the spleen from the liver, from the kidney, from the pancreas. We don't know those things. We don't understand the way insulin functions in our body, but we keep eating things that causes us to have insulin spikes and crashes and all the hormonal disruptions that we experience all the time. So that's why knowledge is really key. Knowledge of who we are, remember who we are, live in our purpose. And that's when we become the Ibrahim Traores.
Is that so what you're saying though is remind me of, and I hope we don't fall in that category, but it's an old African proverb that says, not to know is bad. Not to want to know is worse. I'm trying to say that's, and I hope most of us don't fall in that, not even interested, not even wanting to know, man. You know what I mean?
But brother, there are so many people, when you try to tell them something about something that they need to know, they'll say, don't tell me, I don't want to know, because knowing means that you have to change. And when you change, you leave the comfort of your dysfunction. It's just like, this is the solstice. It started last night, somewhere around 10 something. So that means for the next 4 days, I don't eat food. I drink water with oranges and cayenne pepper, thanks to Dr. James Brown, who put us on that regimen. Okay. It takes a lot, because all you see all day is food coming at you. Everywhere you go, they're giving you something, and it reminds you. But then when you look at the benefit that you get from fasting, and you see that it repairs your body, there is a benefit that comes from having the discipline to do without, because you're empowering your body to heal itself. And most of the things that we suffer from can be healed if we take the proper approach to giving our body what it needs to heal itself. We are some amazing amazing things. You know, I mean, when you think about all the different systems that work in your body, some of them work and you don't even have to think about. You don't have to tell yourself to breathe. Your lungs do what your lungs do. Your heart does what it does. The blood moves around in your body and it functions. You don't have to think about it. That's an amazing system. You think about all the systems that you have functioning in your body. You know, we're food processors. We take in food, goes through a digestive process, it extracts the nutrients, whatever, that delivers those nutrients to the cells do it, and you got trillions of cells in your body, and all these things are working. It's amazing. And then if you have the right mentality and you face this dysfunction or this disease, you have the knowledge to acquire the information that you need to facilitate the healing. Now, you can go to Dr. So-and-so who don't know you from a can of paint. He don't know you the way you know you.
Mm-hmm.
But you go to the doctor and you ask the doctor what's wrong. Doctor don't know about your trauma. Doctor don't know about your emotional issues that caused you to have the pain. They don't, but you do. And when you face those things and you address those things, that's when you create the change that will take you away from the pain that you're suffering from. But you have to be diligent, you have to be disciplined, and you have to do the work. So it might mean saying no to the Doritos. It might mean saying no to the Reese cups. It might mean saying no to that mocha frappuccino, you know, that has 14, 15 teaspoons of sugars that cause your white blood cells to not work properly. So your body break down because you creating the condition that causes the breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, know yourself and remember who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's
See,
my message today.
yeah, and it's a good message, and it's a good message. See, you know, even if you don't do, you know, restrict your diet as much today, at least take some quiet time to sit and meditate for a minute, you know, for the next 3 days. Just meditate for a minute. Think about where you're going, what you want, what direction you want to go. Think about healing. Think about health. You know, just take the time because, you know, if our ancestors and ethnic groups all over the planet recognize this time frame as something important, then do so. Because you see, right now, this system is not working in the best interest. They're not working. This system is not working in harmony with nature about nothing. Like Dr. Professor Small said, you know, we would rather take on a culture or a group or ethnic group of people that's defaming or desecrating nature rather than picking up on a group that is talking about living in harmony with nature. You know, nature's all around you here, and you can see how they treat nature. So that actually can tells you and show you what level of spirituality and morality that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
You know, the type of people. If you just look around you, you know,
So
we give that example of that symbiotic relationship between us and trees. We need oxygen, okay? And they take in, you know, look how God created that. Ain't that a wonderful thing? So that's a sacred relationship between you and trees. So, and then, but if you studied history, you would see indigenous people give homage to the trees. You know what I'm saying? They look at the trees as being something, you know, if something's gonna bring you life, just like if you're a young kid, and if your mother and them go grocery shopping and they bringing food in, you like shoes. That's an important person in my life right there, right at this point, because I can't feed myself. It's the same thing here. If those trees is bringing you good, fresh, clean oxygen that's giving you good oxygen every day. That's a sacred relationship, you know.
yeah.
And that's why I
And
say get back with nature.
why would you cut the tree down if the tree is keeping you alive?
It don't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. You know, another thing that I ran across last week was this agricultural system where they didn't use pesticides.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't use insecticides. They used chickens. So the chickens are in the area where the food is being grown, and the chickens are eating the insects that would cause a problem to the plants. You know, it's because we understand nature, just like you were talking about, understanding that relationship to nature. You know, something else that has come to me recently, and that is the parallels between what we consider the Christ and certain aspects of the body.
Mhm.
Like you have 33 vertebrae, right?
Mhm.
And his life was 33 years long.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, you look at the sevens. There's certain symbolisms that
Mhm.
relate to who the Christ was
Mhm.
and 7 days of the week.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
look at the 12 apostles.
Mhm.
The 12 apostles represent 12 signs of the zodiac.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
look at the significance of the number of 13. Well, he made 13. You know, you look at the number 666. Well, the number 666 is equivalent to carbon.
Mhm. Mhm.
Carbon has that relationship to melanin. And when you think about melanin, who do you think about? Us.
Black cells. Mhm.
But we've demonized that number and somehow made it evil when it's the exact opposite of that. 666 is the number of man. But they flipped all that against you and they call it a cult. And a cult basically is just it's hidden knowledge that's right
Mhm.
there in front of you.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know, so again, getting back to knowledge and understanding, awareness of who you are, the importance of living in your purpose. This is how we create the change in society. What's going on in Burkina Faso right now, and what you mentioned about Uganda, this is people waking up to what needs to be done and saying, we're not going to do it your way anymore. You're giving us pennies on the dollar for something that has way greater value. So at a point you have to say we can't continue to give our stuff away and then let you exploit it with us. That whole concept of the United States of Africa, of having visa less travel between countries and allowing neighbors to do business with each other that benefits each other. This is what we have to do to liberate the entire planet because we're all over the planet and
Mhm.
we have to understand our connection to that. That's why I appreciate the fact that you bring up Africa the way that you do, because we can't separate ourselves from ourselves. That's one of the ways that they've disempowered us.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
for you to think that you don't have a connection to your family across the water, bruh, you've been there. I've been
Mhm.
there. You go there, you see people that look like everyday people that you pass on the street here.
Absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
we the same people. We may
Thank
sound
you.
a little different. We may
Mhm.
dress a little differently sometimes, but we the same people.
Mhm.
So, and here's the other thing. We're a beautiful people. We've been taught that our big noses and our big behinds and all these other things that are natural attributes to us,
Mhm.
we've been taught that those things are bad because they didn't fit someone else's aesthetic. So we have people who grow up traumatized because they're a few shades darker than somebody else.
Mhm.
And they've been
Mhm.
teased all their
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
Then
Mhm.
when you come back to that reality that everything is the opposite of what they tell you, that's when you say, oh, just like Solomon said, I am dark but comely, O ye daughters of Kedah,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
embrace the beauty of your blackness. When you look metaphorically and you look at the meta nature, blackness represented sacredness.
That's
It
right.
represented holiness. It
Mhm.
represented godliness. So when you see those images of black pharaohs, what they're showing you is God in the form of a person on the earth. That's what they were showing you.
Mhm. Mhm.
If you want to take it deeper, people think of Judaism as a monotheistic religion. It's not. They had multiple gods in Judaism.
Mhm.
If you just look at the name is Elohim. Well, if
Mhm.
you know anything about Hebrew, I am at the
Agree.
end of the word is plural.
Sure. Mhm. Mhm.
So there were many gods. And if you want to take it back to the step pyramid and what King Unas wrote in that pyramid, people were operating under the assumption that everybody were divine beings
Mm-hmm.
because they had a code to live by. And that code, the 42 declarations of freedom from sin, allowed them to exist in their divinity because they weren't doing the things that would make you ungodly. You were doing godly things every day that you attested to.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's
but
why. That's what I said. That's why I was talking to them. That when they went to these explorations, that everybody let them in because they thought they was human beings like them. Wasn't no big conflicts on the seashores of these folks. The British explorations all over the place. Everybody welcomed them and let them in.
it's because when you think about what the essence of God is, it's love.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to treat somebody with suspicion if you have love in your heart for them. Why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at those who have dominated our civilization for the past 2,000 years, they didn't have that mindset. Their mindset was to conquer, to take, to exploit, to pillage. Everything is mine. You know, you look at it from the perspective of man and not from the perspective of God.
But let me ask you a question. Because I touched a little bit about epigenetics and DNA. Now you saying those particular things, exploitation and taking and cunning and backbiting and lying and all that other stuff took place 2,000 years ago. And it's still going on right now. So is that an observation as far as DNA is concerned, or those kind of traits that can be passed on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
you look at the Bill Gateses of the world. Well, who came before them? And what was their mentality?
Mm-hmm.
They carried that mentality from 19 something, 1908, 1919, whatever. They've
Mm-hmm.
carried that into this century. Same mindset that's responsible for Planned Parenthood. Sorry if I'm stepping on toes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what that mentality was, because they wanted to prevent us from multiplying because they are threatened by our existence. So how do you reduce numbers? You make those things available that will reduce the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
It's depopulation. It's population control. That's why you have a medical system that would see a black patient different than a white patient and assume that a black woman has a higher threshold for pain, so she don't get the medication.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you're treating us differently. But at the same time, you want to treat us like you treat everybody else, so that you give us a drug that's meant for a white person that's detrimental to a black person, but we get the drug anyway.
But let's touch on that real quickly on what you just said, population control. How can a group of people that has the least amount of population on the planet be talking about population control? So who are they talking about when you're talking about population control? Because if you only make up 12% of the whole world, you know what I'm saying, the whole planet, then what population? The question to be asking is, what population control are you talking about?
Well, you know, we live in this world that somehow there's an idea that the majority should control things. Majority rule, they call it. So when you look at America, you look at a country that has embodied this whole idea of majority rule. But the issue that you have right now is because of the changing in the population, the majority doesn't remain the majority. And if they don't remain the majority, then they lose that idea of rulership by majority.
Mm-hmm.
So while their birth rate does not exceed their death rate, their numbers are dwindling. So this is a last stitch effort to remain relevant and to continue to hold that perception of majority.
Mm-hmm.
But Dr. Whitaker, Nana Kwame II, he put us on game when you had that event over there on South Miles.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about the rise in the population of Islam in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he talked about the changes in the population in general.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on right now. So in America, they say that by the year 2050, white folks will no longer be the majority. That's what they're saying. And when you look at the reality, is it's that will change sooner than then. You know, and so that might
Was this what we experiencing right here? Because that's what I called it. I said, you going through Custer's last stance. They trying to keep. Well, Dr. Whitaker said this. He said democracy is not working for certain people right now. For it to work, you got to be in the majority. So they willing to give up not willing to give up. So they know this change is going to happen, as far as not being the majority, but to still try to be in power in that minority position. Some of the things that we're looking at right now is what we're facing. So, like you said, I think it's Custer's last stands. They're trying to keep a claim and keep a hold to power, the power structure right here. Yeah, that's therefore those terms of want my country back, make America great again. That's what all is, and that's why I say to the people that these are dangerous times right now. And you better be aware of what's going on right now, because you got a group of people, just like with the lady wrote the book, How Civil Wars Start. Look it up on YouTube, Barbara Walter, not the Barbara Walters that you know, but Barbara Walter. She wrote a book, How Civil Wars Start. She said, contrary to popular belief that it's the impoverished that bucks up against the hierarchies, she said, no, it's a group of people who see their power outgoing. This is what we faced here.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Another thing that I'll point out is that majority rule is really an illusion. And I'm reflecting on the piece that Dr. Whitaker wrote back in 2016 that he shared with us a couple of weeks ago. The truth of the matter is that this is a country of minority rule, and the rulership comes in the form of government. So it's the legislature, which is a small group of people, 400 or 500 people, 9 Supreme Court justices, and the executive branch of our government. Compared to the entire population, it's a small group of people. Absolutely. So in essence, what we really have is the same thing that they had in South Africa. And some might argue that they still have it, because, you know, folks who don't really have a true claim to land still have it, and complain about somebody taking back what wasn't theirs in the first place. How you gonna cry?
No, he's gonna rise up against
cry.
Huh?
Yeah. I'm just asking, how you gonna cry when you came up and you took somebody else's car that wasn't yours? You took their car, and they wake up and say, hey, wait a minute, you've been driving my car all these years, but it's really my car. I want my car back. How you gonna complain about somebody taking their car back? It wasn't your car to begin with.
No, they can't see that.
It's illogical, and they get all up in their feelings because they forget about the history of how they got the car in the first place.
Absolutely. And then like I talked to them about NATO before, research NATO. I said, it's telling you this is all about light-skinned folks that they trying to keep in power. You know, NATO is all white nations, and that's what it's about. None of those southern equator countries is pretty much a part of this NATO thing. They telling you what it is. And you see Trump sit up here and talk about, well, genocide going on and all these atrocities going on in Africa, from Somalia to Sudan to Uganda, the Congo, and all the rest of that. You know, people are being like unalived, and ain't a word spoken about that at all. But some controversial stuff about some farmers out there and the Africanos and whatever you call them, and they having a little difficulty. Oh, we gotta go there and save these people. I mean, come on, man. They telling you right in your face, it ain't about you. You know, they tell you right in your face. You know, so when you gonna work as a collective and start looking out for yourself?
When you talk about genocide, We can look at what happened 3 or 4 years ago. That's one of the most heinous crimes that has ever been committed against humanity, because it was completely about genocide and population control. And now
I had to think a little bit what you was talking about.
The truth is bubbling up to the surface. Now the facts are
Yeah.
being known, and
Yeah.
now all those folks who were saying, I knew I shouldn't have done that. I knew I shouldn't have done that. And everybody was looking at us like we were crazy because we were saying, nah, man, no,
I ain't feeling that yet.
Now, so now you look around and we going to 3 and 4 funerals a week, bro. We're dealing with the fact that this genocide has occurred, but you ain't even calling that because you have brainwashed people into not even seeing it for what it is. That's the truth. That's the truth. I did something, Lynn, and I'm going to share this with you because we have conversations about this. I may have sent it to you. Maybe I didn't, but I intend to. I saw something in my emails yesterday. It was about a city in Canada that decided to reinstate fluoridation. So they took the fluoride out of the water, and then for whatever reason, they came back to it. Now, we have conversations about fluoride and the decalcification of the pineal gland and all that all the time. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, and they were saying because there was some kind of cost to the citizens of that city. I think it was Calgary, Canada. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, this seems like propaganda. This seems like social engineering. This seems like them steering us back to something that we have known for years to be dangerous, but now you want to justify it. So I said, let me see what ChatGPT got to say about this. And I used the ChatGPT /Thoth, THOTH, which those of us who really know, that's Tahuti. That's Tahuti. So in my mind, I'm asking Tahuti. Okay. And so the answer that I get was that there was an industrial use for fluoride, and they needed to find some kind of way to continue
get rid of it,
to sell fluoride. So they sold it on the idea that it prevents cavities. Now, I'm thinking, now wait a minute, you talking to a person who critically and analytically looks at things. So if dentists are in the business of making money because people get cavities, why would they not want people to get cavities? They want people to get cavities because they come to the dentist to get them repaired. So that don't make sense to me. The same way that the medical association allows for certain things to be consumed, calling them generally recognized as safe, but knowing that if you take too much of it, it can kill you. So they create certain standards. So it just didn't make sense to me. So then I started asking questions, and you'll see the questions that I asked. But basically, it came back to there's an agenda, and the agenda has some spiritual implications because you're using water as a delivery system. And you're using that water to deliver something that is poisonous to the body. So if you realize that it's going to have the calcification issue that it has, then you know what it's going to do. If this society does not want us to think, does not want us to do it, then they're going to give us all the fluoride that they can, and then they're going to tell us that it's good for us. When in truth, remember what I said, everything is the exact opposite of what they tell you. Just like this monetary system. The monetary system that we're dealing with right now is the biggest Ponzi scheme on the planet. Because the money that they talk about does not exist. It's just moving paper. It's moving
Crunching
digital
numbers.
information.
Yeah, that's all.
You know, we talk about the fractional reserve all the time. When you go to the bank and you give them $1,000, they got $10,000 in credit. They didn't make $9,000. They didn't print 900 $100 bills. All they do is they say, okay, well, you gave us this, now we got that. And then they lend somebody credit. There's no money moving. When you go to the bank and you work out that mortgage, you might come to them with a check for your down payment, but you didn't walk in there with a suitcase full of $100 bills. You just move information from one place to another. That's the beauty of it for them, is that all they got to do is just keep creating more money. And the more they create, the more they put in our system, the less it's worth. So what happens in Zimbabwe happens in America. We get hyperinflation. We paying $10, $12 for a dozen of eggs. It keeps going. Eventually, it's going to be $24 for a dozen. You're going to pay $2 an egg until you wake up and decide to get a chicken that'll lay an egg for you for the cost of some food. You know, this is what this system is going to do to us, because you're going to have to find another way. You know, you're going to have to put that seed in the ground and grow you some watermelon. Or some celery or some cucumbers or something, you know, and that would actually be better for you. But anyway, I went off on a tangent, but the main point was, remember who you are. We have to remember who we are, and we have to live in our purpose. Simple.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah. All I can say is reiterate, our ancestors laid this down. Please give them a shot in taking a look at it and studying who you are and what you are. They've been through this before. They've done this, you know, and we can. You have to see that we still second and third class citizens here, and they're not working. This system is not working in the interests of black folks. We got to see that, and I know some of us have. We become good navigators in this system here, and we think it. Well, I made a little room for myself and this, that, and other, but that's not it, darling. That's not it. We need to, work on this collective stuff, because it's folks out here who's out there really trying to get rid of your behind. With AI coming on board, then what you gonna do with all the extra people? What you gonna do, y'all? You got to think about that, So, but like you were saying before, though, we over in this country, we lost more people than anybody with our high tech behind. Okay, we supposed to be this. How come? And that's how I encourage you. Look at Dr. John Campbell. Dr. John Campbell, please stay in touch. He give you a world view of what's going on around you, okay? And they still talking about this backlash of stuff that is going on. When Vince talked about all these funerals and stuff we going through now, okay? You better wake up and find out what's going on. And there's actually I ran across a video that I got from them, that they found out that it's something that's worked, that NAC. It's a certain type. I forgot what you call it. It's a certain type of NAC. It'll come back to me. But anyway, yes, because people was wondering, those who made that mistake, what can they do? You know what I mean? So they came out with that come up with that and said it's working well in helping people.
There are protocols that you can reverse the damage that was done, and get your DNA back into a good working order, so to speak, because that's what that was really all about. It was about reprogramming us through our DNA. That's what messenger stuff is about. The messenger came in to deliver a message and switch things up for you, to make you something else, something other than what you are. Yeah. So the way to say I'm gonna stay me is I keep my DNA intact, without the interruption, you know, in the
Mm.
messaging.
Okay, little
Yeah.
homework. Little homework. Look up smart dust. Look up smart dust. That's one piece of homework. Second piece of homework, go to YouTube and look up a video with Dr. Charles Morgan in it. And then make sure you have the right one. He's in a like a lecture hall classroom setting, and he's talking to some West Point students. Dr. Charles Morgan, and look up something that's called Smart Dust, and that'll let you know where I mean, you put two and two together, you'll see where they're trying to go with this thing here as far as controlling, because they hell bent on trying to marry technology with human beings. You know, the cyborg they try to create. They look like they're hell bent on that. You know, so it probably get rid of the regular population and everybody. You know, just cyborgs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I
But
see. I just got a
also,
message. I just got a message back from Miss Brenda. It says, she said yes. Speak on Dr. Campbell and the importance of vitamin D. You know,
yeah,
vitamin D and all that.
about Dr. Campbell, when this thing first came out, he
Mm-hmm.
was on top of it. And
Mm-hmm.
to a certain extent, he was in agreement with certain things that were
After
being
he took, yeah, he did it. Yes, he was.
But then he did a deeper dive into it, a deeper probe, and he's examining published studies, published information, medical information, and then he's learning the truth. And in full transparency, you see the paradigm shift. And then you know, you look at others who are being called crazy and demonized. I ain't gonna say no names, but y'all know who I'm talking about. Um, you can see that what these people were saying was actually true.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
You
So.
know, you go to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or you go to these different places and you start looking at that information, it's going to start coming to you. And then you be like, wow, they actually did that. They did this. This is what's happening. That's what's happening really in mainstream news.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, they might come out with something every once in a while. But for the most part, this information is being suppressed because they don't want you to wake up to what they're doing to you. That's the whole thing. It's just like the banking system. They want you to continue to have faith in a banking system that is completely broken. The banking system is baroque. The FDIC does not have enough money to cover all of the deposits that are in the banks. So if everybody came to the bank and said, I want my money now, the insurance company that insures the money can't deliver. So what they're doing now is they're switching our monetary system to a new system. It's happening while we have this conversation. It's happening. And we don't know. You know that you can go some places and you can't pull out your dollar bill to pay for something, but you don't know why. They're transforming the financial system. And what they're doing now, like other countries around the world, they're accumulating as much gold as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that I don't know if you know this, bro, but this past week silver went up to $38 an ounce.
No, I didn't know it went
Right
up.
now, it's around $35 an ounce.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying that silver is projected to go up to as high as $100 an ounce, or even more than that, because there's not enough silver to cover the demand for silver that's needed for things like solar panels and military weapons and all that other kind of stuff. And there are people who own silver on paper who are saying, I want the silver,
Myself.
and the silver is not there. So because of this acute demand for it and the shortage of physical silver, it's
There's
going
only,
through the roof. And it's
there's only so much on the planet. There's only so much of the
right.
silver on the planet. And it
Yeah.
has so It has a multi-purpose, needs so many things that it's needed for. So I can see how it can, to retain that value, that has. So I don't see. I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna leave. So I said it before, only maybe one time on the show. I'm gonna say it again. I know they gonna let me, they gonna beat me up where I ain't gonna be able to leave the country or nothing. But we got all
Don't say
because with Trump, they you ain't gonna be able to say nothing. You can't say nothing negative. This is where he going with that. We gonna have to be have papers. I was listening to some of the people on Roland Martin show. They was talking about people that's been picked up been here for 30 years, got all kind of papers, and you gotta defend themselves and all this stuff. I said, black folks, and I called these. I said, yeah, I said, black folks gonna have to travel with papers in a minute, and look like we heading that particular way. But this ain't too bad, but it's bad enough. This just how I feel. That I don't. I say it like this. I don't claim nothing here. I don't claim this country as being nothing that is associated with me and mine. And the reason I say that this is my personal opinion is because since modern times, 400 or 500 years, we've been asking to be just treated fair like human beings. So why would I feel like raising a flag on 4th of July off of, for what? I've been trying, and people been dying to be treated like human beings forever. So how can I feel comfortable with pride about waving a flag for something? And our country, this is our country. When did it become your country? I would like to know when. And you've been begging and pleading to be treated fairly. So this is my new analogy, because for those who say we built this country and we got stake in it, you absolutely is right. You are right. We did built this country. But I just found a new answer to that one. Okay, Vince, you work for the company that you did. While you was working for that country, if you came up with any kind of new idea, who did it belong to?
They got it.
It belonged to the people who owned it, right?
Yeah.
So all the stuff that we built, even though we built it, but you was doing it in the auspice of somebody else employing you to do it, even though they didn't pay you. So it ain't your stuff.
Right.
Well, stuff, the people own it. But
illustrate the point. You built the building, but you ain't collecting the rent.
You ain't collecting the rent, dude. That's it.
You ain't collecting the rent. So what's your stake in it? Your stake is your labor that you might have gotten paid for, or it may have been free. But if you ain't collecting the rent, if you ain't selling the building and making massive profits, then it ain't your building. It ain't your country. You can take credit for what it is, but you can't receive
you can't claim
credit.
Ownership. You can't claim ownership.
You can't receive the credit that allows you to spend money on other things to acquire more things. If you don't have land, you don't have language, you don't have culture, you don't have an identity, you don't have an existence. You just floating around in the universe.
Absolutely. And in closing, our good sister Brenda, she's an avid supporter of what I do and the functions and stuff like that. And and she talked about the vitamin D that Brother Campbell, Dr. Campbell, always talk about. Is very important, because you should know that living in this northern hemisphere, I forgot that region is. What region? It's a region that how they divided the region, but us being in this particular latitude, it's not good for black people, and over 100 or plus more illnesses alone come up from a lack of vitamin D alone. You know what I mean? So melanated people need to, you need to know your physiology. This is when I talked about melanin and understanding melanin, and how it deals with radiation and some of the drugs and stuff that you use. It's important. You need to know your physiology. And you need to sit your doctor down, because your doctor is never going to tell you about this thing. And vitamin D is critical to black folks at this particular point, living in these cold regions. So Yeah, we gotta know, grow to know more about ourselves. It's imperative that we do that.
Yeah.
Any
And
closing
to
Vince?
underscore what you're saying, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just to underscore what you're saying about vitamin D, one of the best sources of vitamin D for us is sunlight. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why it's important to spend time outside every day if you can. You know, if you can put your feet on the ground without shoes on, that too. But you could be outside for 20 on a daily basis, just that act alone. The vitamin D you're gonna get as you convert the sunlight into that in your body. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, vitamin
Yeah.
D extremely critical for us, and it's one of the ways that we're able to push back stress is
Mm-hmm.
vitamin D.
Yeah.
So extremely critical. And as you said, being up here in this northern climate, we don't get as much exposure as we could. But just know it don't have to be bright sunshine. It could be cloudy. You still gonna get some.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Amazing thing. Like my key, getting back to nature. That's what's gonna save us, my good people. Giving back, going back to nature, because that's God's handiwork, and that's gonna enlighten you. It's gonna educate you, and that's gonna be purposeful for you as far as life and understanding that and it's gonna humble you. That's what it's gonna do too. It's gonna humble you, man. When you see I sit up there and look at that sun. I said, Dad, it's been there for millions of years. Ain't plugged up to nothing, Vince. Just giving out that radiant energy like that. Ain't plugged to nothing. You know, that humbles you. Knowing that there's millions of Milky Ways out there. Millions of them. And we just a little speck in the Milky Way, and there's millions other Milky Ways that are out there. Lord,
But
that's
and
infathomable.
here's the other thing is that we are light beings and we generate light within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we have a connection to that. There's a cosmic connection between the sun
Absolutely.
and us. And
Mm-hmm.
my personal theory is that because we have that connection, that's how we're able to manage to survive despite all the stuff that we do to ourselves. Because we
Mm.
have that connection, we can enhance our ability to live when we become cognizant of the things that will enable us to work our systems better. But despite the eating the Doritos and all that other kind of stuff, somehow we still manage to get from point A to point B. We might be crippled, we might be hunched over, but we still making it because we get what we get from the sun.
But check this out though, Vince. But you got a group of people who is hell bent or even thinking about blocking the sun. Come on, think about what's being said here. If sun that our ancestors look at as the life giver to the damn planet and to people. You just said what it does to us as black people, and you got a group of people who
Right.
is talking about blocking the sun, and some people saying that's what some of those chemtrails is, because with that barium in there and aluminum in there, it's reflecting back a portion of the sun away from the planet.
But think about it, brother. Think about, first of all, do you know how many flags representing countries around this world have suns on them?
Hmm.
Look it up.
Probably.
You'll see
Yeah.
that there's a sun on so many different flags from countries. But do you know why? It's
Hmm.
because we worship the sun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The food that we eat exists because the sun feeds information that's converted into chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll is what the plant operates based on.
Mm-hmm.
People worshiped the sun, and then they flipped it and they made the SUN the SON. And
Uh-huh.
that's how we
Uh-huh.
got disconnected from the SUN.
And they
But
would
when you
know
think
even
about
even what you said, even what you said right there, Vince. Even what you said right there. Look at all your holy pictorial pictures and diagrams. When they even speak of Jesus, they got a sun disk right behind his head.
and
All
that actually
of the holy figures and stuff. Yeah.
right, that actually came from Heru,
Mm-hmm.
who
Yeah.
was the first representation of what we identify as Jesus. But I'm just getting to the fact that if you get light from a source and the light is what sustains you, then they would want to block the light from you to cut you off from your sustenance. That's why. That's how I would logically process that idea. If they want to keep you away from the thing that's giving you life, they'll block it. Just like when you put that sunscreen on,
screen
has the titanium dioxide in it, which is a hormone disruptor that's known to cause cancer. You putting on sunscreen thinking you're doing something good for yourself, and you're injuring yourself because you're giving yourself the very thing that's going to cause you to get cancer. Remember, everything is the opposite of what they tell you. So if they telling you to put the sunscreen on and you need vitamin D3 from the sun, you will be a fool. And I know there's folks out there saying, you got to wear the sunscreen. You got to protect yourself, UV radiation and all that other kind of stuff. Bruh, you've been to Africa. Do you see black folks slathering sunscreen on themselves every day?
Not at all. Not at all. No way. And they're right up on the equator. No, not at all. See, that's why I'm going back to my shirt, anti-establishment. That's why I say everything got to be reset. You got to rethink everything that you've been taught to this point. You'll be better off throwing everything out. That's why I try to get to people and I talk to people. I say, look, man, who taught us to think this way? Why does it have to be the way? Who said this? And it's hard for us to get that out of our mind because you've been brainwashed with this one way of thinking and in this culture. And this is white and black is like 180 degrees opposites of each other. And so how can you allow or willingly accept a system or customs or rituals through the lenses of an ethnic group that is in total opposite of you? How could you? I mean, that's critical analytical thinking right there. You got to sit down to a point like, damn, I like my food different. We worship different. We like our women different. Your humor different. Everything dressed different. Everything. So, but when it comes to the ideology of what God is, who God is, spiritual, all that they're gonna be right on point. They're gonna be spot on that. Come on, man. That don't make logical sense, man.
It makes
so that's why I say we need a reset.
Yeah, it makes as much sense as you expecting someone who has oppressed you to give you the information and knowledge to free yourself.
Come on.
You think they're gonna tell you how to be free when their whole objective is to keep you enslaved? They're not gonna give you that information.
Come on, man. Damn,
man.
Like I said, they use fluoride as the dummy down people. Fluoride was used, they say, I'm hearing for Nazi German prison camps. Dr. Scott Whitaker talks about it, and I picked it up a few other places. To make the prisoners docile and easier to control, they use fluoride. So I'm just repeating what they said. You do your own research or whatever you want to do. But my point is, it got to be something to it, because one of my workmates used to say that other groups was wondering why Cleveland wasn't rioting as much as they did. He said, "What's in y'all water that's got these folks calm?" And he used to say it all the time. And so, but that's my point. But when our little babies get killed, we raise the fist for a minute, and then it come on. So between that and all the hormones that they putting in the water and our low testosterone that most of the men have, this is keeping you under control, and we just got to be aware of it. But hopefully information is coming out, more and more information coming out on Facebook and things of like, because I just gave up Facebook 5-some years ago, because we were just displaying all our dysfunction worldwide. People putting stupid stuff on there, and it's showing black folks in their top ignorance, versus that. I would put something out there, or we would put something we talk about, you wouldn't get no response, So years back, I was like, I'm done with this Facebook stuff. It should be a tool to help us, but it's a tool to show all our buffoonery all out here. You know what I'm saying? So I stopped, but it's getting better now with TikTok and all that. And that's why you got this rise in their interest that all this information that they can't control is coming out. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the truth is that Facebook and social media is a psyop. It really is. But even in the midst of its dysfunctionality, there's truth
Mm-hmm.
that's bubbling up in the surface, up to the
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah.
I've learned more about Black history on Facebook than I learned in 12 years of schooling.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. It's better now. It's much better now than what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah. But I think I go big what our ancestors said, talk about the age of Aquarius. This information is going to come out. Biblically, they talked about it. You look in Isaiah 19, it talks about there's going to be a highway out of Egypt. Information is going to be coming out, So, this may be where we at, when we got our what's going on in continental Africa. It might be the time now, you know. So, with that being said, we ain't gonna hold them. Any other announcements? You got any programs, anything going on?
Actually, next Friday we're gonna have Gloria Cummings Jones back at Larchmere Arts. So she's gonna do a show with Ed Ridley, Elijah Gilmore, and Brad McGee. And then on the 5th of July, we have a poet named Vish. I think her name is Irie Vish. She's going to be our featured poet, and we'll do percussion and poetry with Elijah Gilmore. And then the following weekend, we're having the Larchmere Cultural Arts Festival. So it's going to start with an art exhibition at Unbar, a performance by Dr. Mary Weems and myself at Larchmere Arts. And then on the next day, we'll start with a drum class at Sister Queen's Kings and Queens Cultural Village, African drumming class, a writer's workshop from Nicole Miller from 1 to 3, a shorts film festival with films from Mary Weems, Michael Oatman, Terrence Spivey, Peter Lawson Jones, Wayne Smith, myself, and there may be another couple of other films in that. We're going to have a poetry slam that Saturday evening. And then on Sunday, we're going to have an ekphrastasy event where people will be invited to look at the work of Bonnie Venable and Rodney Carpenter and then write poems and then share their poems in that session. Then we're going to have a digital photo exhibition at Unbar with Jeff Lawson, Michael Lilly, and a few other photographers. And then after that, Hugh People Vocal Ensemble. They're going to perform at Larchmere Arts to cap off that weekend. So this is the next 3 weeks coming up at Larchmere Arts. We got a lot of good stuff coming your way. So stay tuned. You can go to the Facebook page for Larchmere Arts. You can go to my page. I'll be posting links to Eventbrite where you can get your tickets for this event. We're probably only going to sell about 200 tickets. So after 200, that will be it. But your ticket will give you access to every event that happens over that 3-day weekend. So that's what's coming up.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. All right then, my good brother. We made it through another Saturday. Hopefully, some people got something out of the conversations. We at least got through half of the show with our good brother Dr. Whitaker before technology got to it again, and he also had a meeting going on too. So that's probably why. I mean, that was about to start, so that's probably why he didn't come back as well. So appreciate you guys. Come on out to the Juneteenth ball, the 29th, and enjoy yourself, and let's get a piece of our culture. Mentally and physically as well, and digest some of the African food as well. So that'll be good. So other than that,
All right.
Close us out, Vince.
All right. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and make today your absolute best day. Peace, y'all.
Peace. Peace.